Floods expose threat to military post by climate change. Offutt Air Force Base, Nebraska. The Missouri River. Days into the flooding, muddy water was still lapping at almost 80 flooded buildings at Nebraska's Offutt Air Force Base, some inundated by up to 7 feet of water. Piles of water logged in. Though the headquarters of Strategic Command, which plays a central role in detecting and striking at global threats, wasn't damaged, the flooding provided a dramatic example of how climate change poses a national security threat, even as the Trump administration plays down the issue. It is also a reminder that the kind of weather extremes escalating with climate change aren't limited to the coasts, said retired Rear Admiral David W. Were. The late winter floods that have swept over Plains states starting last week, breaching levees, halting Amtrak trains, and killing at least 3 people, are also the second major inundation in less than a decade to hit the air base outside Omaha. It would take weeks or more for scientists to determine if the Plains flooding, or any weather disaster, was caused or worsened by climate change, which is occurring as emissions from coal, oil, and gas alter the atmosphere. But federal agents, the military, has warned in a series of reports under past administrations that climate change is a security threat on many fronts. That includes but Trump has belittled his own government's warnings. During a January, responding to an AP inquiry, the White House's National Security Council did not directly address whether the administration sees climate change as a national security threat, but said it takes the issue of climate change seriously. But the Trump White House's national security strategy mentions climate only in the context of countering. Department of Defense spokeswoman Heather Babb said the department works. Under the Trump administration, unlike in previous administrations, the Pentagon has offered little public comment on climate change as a security threat. The Pentagon's guide that leaves it to former military leaders to raise the alarm about how climate change could affect national security. Retired Brigade military bases are launch platforms and you can't. Titley predicted Offutt Air Force Base would prove the latest military installation to have racked up $1 billion or more in damage. Hurricanes struck. The current political atmosphere discourages any big efforts building up base defenses against climate change, said Titley, who also served as Chief Operating Officer of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Defense Department officials by the earlier heavy flooding at Offutt has prompted the base to start raising its levee by 2 feet this year, said Major Megan M. Leem. Sandbagging had held back 2011 floods at the base. The flooding that poured it. More than 30 aircraft were towed to higher ground or flown to other locations. Crews hauled out. By Saturday, the flood had rolled over a third of the base, swamping more than 1.2 million square feet of buildings. Though Strategic Command headquarters escaped flooding, it had to cut staff to a minimum as high water blocked roads. The command holds. Inundated buildings include the 55th Wing headquarters, the massive Benny L. Davis Maintenance Facility, and a building that houses the 55th Wing's flight simulators. About 3,000 feet of the base's 11,700-foot runway is submerged. Touring Offutt, the base's fire chief, Dave Eblin, kicked one of the soggy corn cobs strewn throughout the base. Asked whether there had no. Nick Meyer and Burns reported from Washington. AP Science
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park.